Hello Marvel Heroes fans, my name is Wilfred Wong and welcome to my channel where you see videos and guides on this free-to-play game called Marvel Heroes. Normally, when I look into a heroes, as always, when I look into a hero, I always go through the number crunching to see what the potential is for that particular heroes, and I'll use all this number to tell me a story, and I'll assemble them as a build, and I'll use it on a dummy to practice and see whether it really does tell me the same story as what the number is. Now, in my guides, and I will produce a guides on for Black Cats, but in my guides normally I'll put a small portion of the video at the end to talk about number crunching. But I also understand that not many people would like to look into number because it's like, wow, do I really need to go into a detail? And I fully appreciate that. And also, it is impossible for me to put the same portion of the video out of several builds because nowadays I create guides on individual builds. Some of you may be interested in a range or melee, or for Black Cat, some of you may be interested in stealth or whatnot. So I would like to try something new, if that's okay with you, and let me know how it works out. I would like to just dedicate one video on the number crunching and theory crafting of a hero like Black Cat. And I will have guides on Black Cat depending on how much I go into the specialization, but at least I'll do 2 videos for Black Cat, all right? Now, when it comes to theory crafting, and for those who are new to this as well, it's always based on quite a number of assumptions. You could turn out any number you like because it's just for your own consumption, but you always have to face the reality when you bring the hero in front of the dummy. So, like for me, I look at the numbers, and the numbers tell me a story that each specialization has its pros and cons, strengths and weaknesses. Then I go into a dummy and I verify, see, okay, is my kill time consistent with what the numbers tell me? Now, sometimes it's not. It could mean a lot of things. It could normally, in almost all cases, it could mean that I make a mistake somewhere in my theory crafting or some assumption is wrong. And I have to redo all this assumption, and then after that, try our number again and match with what the result is. If you study physics, you have all these practical physics and theory physics, and and all disciplines have that kind of thing that you have to juggle between the two. And that's no different when it comes to Marvel heroes. You can do any numbers you like, you can churn out anything, put any assumption you like, but at the end of the day, you have to face the music, which is your own, versus the dummy. So I've done that today. I've spent the morning churning a number. I've spent the afternoon going through the dummy, and I'd like to share my result with you on Black Cat when it comes to all this number crunching. All right. So now, if you look at Black Cat, I always take out all the gear, no Omega Point, no hero synergy, no team up gear, because I want to see how Black Cat is being designed. Normally, though, I would have the crit chance to be 50% and brutal to be 50, just to bring it down a little bit for me to be a little bit more conservative. But I realize I can't, because if I do that, the gap between the specialization becomes too huge. The reason why is there's something called Deep Cut, which is a claw power that's been buffed by a crit chance of 30%. Now 30% is quite substantial, and I have to get all this number right in order to tell the story that is closer to reality. Now, if you look at all the main spanner of Black Cat, and you will see that basic. Now I always ask people not to use basic, because you can see by number itself, basic is basically quite rubbish compared to two of them. So if you could sustain the kind of spirit, always go for basic less, meaning that do not use a basic unless a hero design mandates you to do so, like Wolverine, like X-23. Those heroes mandate you to use a basic power or even vision in some sense. All right, and so, yeah, I went through a basic, but you probably like, okay, fine, that one you can throw away. Then after that, you have whip crack, that will give you a number and so on. I always take an average of that. But you use whip crack on trap cooldown anyway. Trap cooldown is 40%, so you would not really have an instance whereby you don't use a trap cooldown, because otherwise, why would you want to use whip crack? So I picked that one, 40%. And it kind of beat the, when you look at DPSY, it beat the Deep Cut plus the full fillet buff by quite a fair bit, which is kind of quite surprising, even when I push it to the reality. And I don't understand, because whip supposed to be, I feel that whip supposed to be weaker than claw, because claw you need to be a lot closer to target, and it's always a bit of risk and return. Why would you be able to stay away from all this damage in front, still dealing more damage, versus the one that is risking a bit more within the melee range of the fall of the enemies? I do not know. So it's something really funny about these numbers, and it will show in a little bit later why it transpired to something that is quite strange, the number wise itself. But things like this you can exploit upon. So if your specialization can use a whip and it's your trap cooldown, the number tell you that yeah, go for it, and it could probably be right. So and then after that you have the grappling whip with the bleed effect, which is 40% buff with that, and you see that well, it doesn't really compare to the whip prep versus deep cut. Why? Well, is the reason is quite straightforward, because it's area tap. So anything with the area tap normally would, the DPS being brought down because it hit a bit more targets, and that is sort of like a reward versus the the effort kind of thing, right? So that is one. And after that, you look into those that are layers. So those are main spender. You always pick a spender and say, okay, fine. I now have a story. I can either pick a whip or I can do a claw. All right. So that's story. And after that, you look into, say, layers wise. You can have land on your feet. Land on your feet is kind of interesting. With the specialization, you can have the vulnerability debuff. So that is one option. And on itself, it's actually not that bad. It's 8.8 DPS layer. If you look at some of the older heroes, with the vulnerability debuff, there's no way you can get 8.8. You probably can get 2, and you'll be happy about it, right? So that is one that... again, always new heroes and newly renewed heroes a bit more yummy than others. Then you have something called the claws out. These two are mutually exclusive if you don't use specialization. But if not, then they say okay. Then you say, well, one is probably better than the other one, and it's probably which one it is. And then after that, you have 2 layers that you could potentially use. 8-second cooldown, and one layer is called Come Here Kitty, and the other is Full Fillet. And I mean, that is the reason why I feel that the balance of these two is off, because if you look at this story here, claw is higher DPS than the whip, totally understandable. And and the two has comparable animation as well. Come Here Kitty as versus Full Fillet. I think Full Fillet may have a little bit longer. I don't know. Maybe that's why I tuned it a little bit up. But yeah, I mean, it's a decent layer. Now, why this one is less than the 8K? Again, the story tells you that because it buffs the power of some other power. So anything that buff other power usually is of a lower DPS. So why is this so high? I do not know. But okay, so there is something that you could take a look and on that. All right, so it depends on whether you whip kind of girl or kitty, or kind of like a claw kind of kitty. So then one of them is there. Then after that, you study the trap. Now the trap is a little bit hard to model, because the way that the gas trap is going to be, you probably apply every 8 seconds, although you can just keep dumping it out, but there's no point, because that is the twice per second kind of thing. There's no point clipping it, right, as per se. And so I would model it after 8 second kind of thing. So that will give you kind of like 8.5, and it's pretty decent as a DOT layer. That's pretty decent. Then you have the sticky trap, which only give you a 2.8 DPS for 8 seconds of vulnerability debuff, and this is the right number, because normally any power with a vulnerability debuff will give you lesser DPS, because it gives you 10% that multiply onto whatever power that follow through. So that is why it's lower, and but that's fine. And Tesla trap, you have a higher DPS, but then in mind you actually have to do 2 of them. So if you do 1 of them, it doesn't do anything. So you have to do 2 at least. So animation wise, you maintain 1 and 2. So it seems high, but then in a sense you actually have to do 2 times. So you can split that into like 7K ish kind of thing. So it kind of like, okay, that makes sense. And and you could draw the map like with all these like a trap here and there. A trap, the counter does not share between the Tesla trap versus these 3 trap. Now, what about the explosive trap? Explosive trap again is a little bit hard to model. You can either, sometimes you try to model, you can't really do 100% accuracy. Really, I can't. Sometimes just approximation somewhere, but you must be aware where the weaknesses when it comes to number crunching, because you must face yourself in the sense that when the story doesn't tell between the reality and what's a number, at least you know where it would deviate, right? So explosive trap is something like if you do the trap specialization, you get a charge every 3 seconds, and you can have up to 15 charge. So so if up to 5 charge. So what it really means that it will take 15 seconds to produce 5 charge. Now, why 5 charge is important? Because if you want to cover the vulnerability plus the DOT layer, you will need 4 charges on the 15-second kind of window, leaving you only one explosive left to do. Having said that, there are power to reset some of this power. So so it is not exactly 15. You may pump me up a little bit like 8 or whatever, but it's just minor stuff. So normally I'm a little bit conservative rather than a bit too over optimistic. And also when it comes to the trap wise, it is very hard to maintain a timer. I don't know whether you guys try or not. So to keep the 8-second timer is pretty hard because you need to keep timing stuff, and that's why I don't really like the trap kind of thing a little bit. But okay, enough of trap, and let's move on to the next bit when they talk about the tool signature. So now Black Cat has 2 signature. Which one should you use? So you have the cat stretch fever as well as cat's meow. If you look at the number itself, one is melee and one is range, so it should come as no surprise to you, just wait for it, that the melee one is higher DPS than the range one. But it does come as a little bit surprising to me that the gap is big, because it should not be huge like this. But again, I'm not questioning I'm sort of questioning the design, but it's like, that is what the number that Gazillion throw in. Personally, I will buff up this one a little bit because it's just not that competitive. Now, then what about if you're hunter, predator and prey, and fortune and favor, which of the 2 shall you use? So what I've done is that I've done some modeling again between the 2, and some part of it is you have something closer to one another. You have something that is really not as close enough, and there's some that's really far away from it. So all in all, the stories tell me that in as much as possible, I should just stick with the cat scratch fever in whatever specialization I use. But that's just a number. In practice, although for my 3 build, I choose cat scratch fever. In practice, you have to move in the range to do that kind of thing, because sometimes when you are doing whip, you are a little bit far away from whatever you're doing, and you may not land those extra bombs or explosive onto the mob that you want to target. So do bear that in mind when you pick which of those things. It's not about picking the highest number. Sometimes it's also about the playability as well. Entirely your choice, but at least you go in with open eyes and say, okay, now I know which one is what and by how much is better or not worse. All right, so that is on the signature. And the last part of it is that it's also very interesting, because if you go for thievery, so at first I wasn't interested in fortune and favor. So I said, it's a bit of like a stealth kind of thing. Do I really want to do stealth? But that was test center. I think they've done a really good job in terms of making the stealth be a little bit easier to execute. There's an allowance that you can do a stealth, and within 2 or 3 seconds, you can do these 2 powers as well. So it's actually, the power itself is pretty high with the 2 layer to it, and it requires you to do a little bit of before you apply this 2 power, you have to do a stealth move. But is it worth it? So that is what this whole thing is about when I go through a number crunching. Now, I'm not going to go through all these numbers here, how I derive all these things, but what I really want to share with you is that I always take a 40% discount. It's just my style. You could have your own style as well. Discount on Spender. Why do I do that on the Spender? Is because when I'm not doing any, when I'm having animation, like those invulnerable animation or any of those signature kind of thing, I'm not using my Spender. So my Spender uptime is not 100%. So that I always take a discount on that, and that sort of reduce the amount of the difference between 2 here. Of course, these 2 there's high discrepancy there. And then after that, I stayed. So okay, for hunter and hunter, I think I would stay with the claw build, I just, yeah, I mean, I could actually go for the whip build, but because I'm not using any traps, so the whip build wouldn't work for me, so I use the claw build. So it gives me a kind of DPS. If I use Predator and Prey, provided that my traps are spot on the 8-second cooldown thingy, it's actually better than the claw build. But then in reality though, the two are pretty similar for me. But bear in mind that Predator and Prey, even if you use whip, you cannot use come here kitty to buff your whip's power. So it does have an edge for the claw, but then these two are very, very similar at least from my calculation and execution. So but the one that really come out really strong is the Fortune and Favor, because that give me a rather good advantage towards the other two specialization. And so I thought, wow, am I making a mistake in my calculation? Actually, I make some mistake on the Predator and Prey and versus the Claw. But then for Fortune and Favor, no. I mean, my kill time is far superior when it comes to Claw. I mean, compared to these two, and it kind of makes sense as well, because if you play Fortune and Favor, you are not really big time on area. You are actually a lot more on a single target. So when will I use Fortune and Favor? I say maybe Raid, because single target. But when will I use the Claw and the other, the Hunter or Predator and Prey? Probably in a more like area kind of environment where I can just cover a larger area without kind of like having to very precise use certain power. So in the end, at the end of the day, what I'm trying to share with you is that the number tell you a story, but it doesn't. It's not a like be all and all kind of thing. You still need to apply to your hero, play it, and see whether you like it or not. So yeah, and I think in closing, I would like to also share with you the legendary, because since I've done it, may as well share with you in the event whereby I say, well, which legendary to use for Black Cat, and I have an answer for you as well. Here I use all the legendary that would kind of relevant, that would be relevant to Black Cat, including a God Killer from Gorgon in High Time Patrol, Gunil, Axe, Nullifier, Excalibur, 70 and 80 version. So I run through all this number. I take down I take down Black Cat, all the basic stats without a legendary. So you take the legendary out, but now I'm having all the right gear. I'm having all the Omega system as well as hero synergy to maximize this one as much as possible. And that's when you say all this like copy and paste kind of thing. But no. Believe me, all these numbers are being refreshed, and the result looks something like this. So the score wise is again not surprising. The result is always constant, right? Axe for physical hero is always the best. So by how much best? Yeah, by quite a fair bit. Would you consider Excalibur, the fact that Black Cat is a dodge deflect hero, maybe that 100,500 defense help her a fair bit, make her a lot more tanky, something you could consider, but you are sacrificing quite a fair bit onto your DPS performance. That's what I'm trying to say. But then, these are all like 1,000 OD mark for some of us who don't really have a luxury of farming, full-time job, and most of the time in training room, like myself. Then I will settle for Gunil. Now Gunil is always about 6% down from the other one. So yeah, I mean, I eat it. That's fine. I mean, instead of killing a target in 1,000 seconds, I do like a 94 seconds. So I miss out 6 seconds on that. But I can live with that. So normally a mob wouldn't take that long to kill anyway. So yeah, and the rest of the legendary, I just use it for illustration. It really does not surprise me at all. How the thing goes, and I mean, these are all the numbers there. God Killer is always the lowest and really kind of low compared to the rest. I will only use it to farm Omega points, but I will not really serious about using that as an end game. All right, so now I hope this video is useful. As always, you can drop me a line and say hello and so on. And I know a lot of you asking me if I can share the Google Doc or not, but the problem is that all these are very much like a living document. If I look at this one versus the one that I had for every other heroes that I've got, the numbers behind changes all the time. Sometimes I do make some mistake here and there. Sometimes I put a lot of junks everywhere. Like let me share with you. So the junks I'm not supposed to show you, but I'm going to show you as some of these junks here that help me to derive certain things. So without some annotation, it's going to be very hard to read why I'm doing something like maybe maybe a 1.35. Where does a 1.35 come from? So so all these things, because I'm not really maintaining the document. After that, I'll just forget about it. And next time when the hero is revealed, I'll do a fresh one again. So I never update my document, and I hope that's fine for just showing you what I'm doing here in a video. All right. So and I will, like I said, do the Black Hat guide, and do check out for that. Till next time we see each other, goodbye. And if you like this video, there's a link in the description of the video back to my website. All right, goodbye.